Turns out there's a whole bunch of them out there.
How many?
How to Train Your Dragon could have spent a little less time on training dragons and more on training their continuity person. Here are some of the biggest mistakes we noticed in the How to Train Your Dragon franchise. Number 1. The toothless can only fly with hiccup rule is going to get broken a lot in this video. In the first How to Train Your Dragon film, when Astrid gets on Toothless for the first time, Toothless takes off uncontrollably and tries to scare her. Hiccup seems to have no control over him at this time. But how can that be if with the new tail fin, Toothless cannot fly without Hiccup's precise control? And if you think we're just being mean, this mistake was even admitted to on the DVD commentary. Checkmate, viewer. Number 2. The camera person for these films is just overworked. After we first meet Grimmel in How to Train Your Dragon 3, there's a scene where a dragon charges him before he's put to sleep. The view from under the dragon's feet show he's getting very close to Grimmel, but when the angle changes, suddenly he's much further back before he's shot. They must have had that dragon run at him multiple times to get that scene just right. Number 3. Another issue that will come up more than once in this franchise is their relationship to ropes. When Hiccup first finds Toothless, there's a dramatic shot where the camera pans over the dragon, and his wing briefly obscures his eye, which is open after the wing passes. But look at the tip of the wing. During the shot, there is a stretch of rope wrapped around it, but in the next shot, the rope is much higher up on the wing and not wrapped around it anymore. Whoopsie. Number 4. They didn't even respect Stoick's funeral enough to get the facts straight. During Stoick's funeral, Hiccup first shoots an arrow towards the ship and then the other characters draw their bows. Gobber is not shown as he is further away. In the next shot, where they shoot their arrows, Valka and Aerith are suddenly farther apart from each other, and Gobber has moved closer in between them. 8 arrows are shot simultaneously, but only 7 arrows finally rain down. Maybe someone missed the boat? We don't think so. Number 5. I know Stoick doesn't have much respect for books, but this is a little much. When Stoick returns from his voyage, he goes to speak to Hiccup about his son's successful dragon training. Hiccup's book ends up on the floor, then it's back on the table and the papers move about as well, while the two are together chatting, as if the scene weren't awkward enough already. Number 6. Yep, time for a franchise forgets about the Toothless Flying Rule, Part 2. In How to Train Your Dragon 2, when Toothless and Hiccup are taken by Valka, Hiccup states that Toothless is unable to fly without his aid. However, later in the film, we see Drago flying on Toothless, but he doesn't touch any of the modifications that Hiccup added to assist in flying him. So how is Toothless able to fly? Hypnosis? I mean, sure, go ahead and say that, but we know the real truth. Number 7. This mistake just wouldn't stop burning in the back of our heads. In the first Dragon's film, when Toothless burns the ground to make a bed for himself, the section of the burned ground drastically increases size between shots. We get it, we're sensitive sleepers too. Number 8. Now, we would all love more than one flame sword, but you have to explain why. In How to Train Your Dragon 2, when Hiccup has blasted Drago off his alpha, he looks at the tail rising in size. Not again. If you look closely though, his sword Inferno is both in his left hand and on his hip, which begs the question, where is dual-wielding Hiccup in the next movie? Number 9. We're just gonna rope you in with another rope-based dragon issue. In the first Dragon's film, after Hiccup cuts the ropes that bind Toothless and the dragon flies away, Hiccup gets to his feet in front of the boulder, but the ropes are gone. However, when Hiccup returns the next day, he finds the ropes very close to the boulder, where they should have been all along. Maybe he's named Hiccup because of all these film gaffes? Number 10. We're not just fishing with this next mistake we noticed. When Hiccup tries to lure Toothless with the fish, he drops his knife on the ground. In the next shot, the knife moves closer to him somehow. Confirmed, Hiccup is a Jedi. Number 11. There's something fishy happening in this next scene. In the scene where Hiccup tests out his first tail fin for Toothless, he gives Toothless a basket of fish. This falls off his face before he takes flight. However, the basket is never seen again. You don't see it under either wing, from behind, and when he takes flight, the little bit of ground he was standing on is gone. Sure, his wings might have blown it over, but how far away could that have been? Number 12. His name is Stoick, so give the guy some space. In the first Dragons film, after Toothless and Hiccup defeat the giant dragon, Stoick finds Toothless on the ground and believes his son to have perished in the battle. As he is kneeling down and beginning to mourn, the rest of the Vikings begin to emerge from the smoke behind him. They are a good distance away from Stoick, but in the very next shot, they suddenly jump much closer to him. Number 13. We don't want to rewatch this scene either, but this mistake has to be pointed out. In How to Train Your Dragon 2, when Drago first puts his foot on Hook Fang, it is directly above Hook Fang's nostrils and in front of a small horn. However, in the next shot, it is higher up on Hook Fang's head. One thing is for sure, we just want him to take his foot off the poor dragon already. Number 14. One man's giant is another man's behemoth. In the first film, after the giant dragon crashes to the ground and begins exploding, you see Toothless and Hiccup flying up its back to escape the blast. The giant's size is significantly bigger at this point. This mistake was so obvious it was actually admitted to on the DVD commentary of the film. Number 15. Continuity really gets torn to shreds in this scene. In How to Train Your Dragon 2, during the battle with the Alpha, Hiccup takes a strip of cloth to cover Toothless's eyes. Just as he puts it on, there is no tear in the top left side, but a split second later, when the camera zooms in, a tear suddenly appears. Now, the high winds might have caused it, but we could have had a moment to show that, right? Number 16. You know nothing about ropes, Jon Snow. In How to Train Your Dragon 2, after Eret, voiced by Jon Snow actor Kit Harington, begins tying up Stormfly, the position of the ropes on her head changed between shots. Number 17. Roughnut is embarrassing enough, you don't need to rub it in. In the beginning of How to Train Your Dragon 3, Roughnut attempts to open a cage by opening it outward. Astrid then tells Roughnut the cage slides, but the cage doesn't actually slide, the lock slides. That's not what Roughnut meant, so this is just Astrid being a jerk to someone she clearly outsmarts anyway. Number 18. Stoick seemed to know more about dragons than he let on, conveniently. In How to Train Your Dragon 3, in a flashback scene, it seems Stoick knew that dragons all lived in a secret hidden world.
Beyond the sunset lies the home of the dragons.
But only now does Hiccup remember this specific fact. This should have been brought up earlier, and before you say, he was talking about the place they found in the first film, then why is Hiccup remembering this now when his dad clearly meant the place they're gonna find in this film? Number 19. A mistake, or just doubling down on the fact that Vikings are jerks? In How to Train Your Dragon 3, while the Vikings meet in the hall to discuss the most recent attack, one Viking says, "What are we doing here?" Despite the fact that a massive fire and invasion just took place. So either they didn't see that, which is impossible, or they did, and somehow they just thought they should be allowed to sleep after that. Number 20. Nothing like a mind-controlled drug introduced in the last 15 minutes of a film. So in How to Train Your Dragon 3, our villain has a drug which mind-controls dragons, and he uses it, but not on the alpha dragon, Toothless, which is in his grasp, even though it's the one dragon that can control all the dragons. How does that make any sense? Those were all the biggest mistakes we noticed in the How to Train Your Dragon franchise. Any you noticed that we didn't mention? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe for more animated content. And thanks for watching The Things Animated.